Hi guys, welcome to my channel Dooley's Life, where I'll talk about my thoughts, life experiences, struggles, and know-hows. So this is my first video, and for this video, I will talk about the question, where are you from? So this sounds like very simple, straightforward question, yet it can be very vague and confusing question for some people like me. So since this is my first video, let me just briefly explain you about my background. I've so far lived in 8 different countries. I was born and raised in Korea till I was 10, grew up in Taiwan as an expat kid, and then my family immigrated to Canada, so where I spent over a decade of my life there. And then I did my master's in Holland, and I lived in different parts in Europe, such as Germany, France, so obviously Holland, Italy, and now Belgium. I also spent about 2 years of my adult life in Korea, where I met my French husband. And so, although I'm a Korean ethnicity, I am now Canadian and recently French. So it's very confusing for someone like me when asked, hey, where are you from? And this question is being asked a lot, especially if you are visiting a city and in the museum, they would just want to do for their stat purposes or whatnot, or when people are just asking you, where are you from? And I know it's weird, but in Europe, when you say I'm Canadian, when you have an Asian face, people are very puzzled. And this was quite a big shock for me because when I grew up in Toronto, everyone's pretty much from everywhere. So it doesn't really matter whether you're Hispanic, Black, Asian. You never really feel, or at least I never really felt really outside of the box per se. Of course, there are struggles that, say, second generations go through, which I will probably make a separate video about it up in Canada. But in Europe, it's really like, oh, but you're Asian, so you cannot be white, so you're not Canadian. So this is really the logic that some people have, and some people really tell you straight to your face. Sometimes you have to learn not to be offended, but explain to people. I mean, in Canada, it's quite multi-ethnic, depending where you're from, so everyone can be Canadian. And I believe this is quite similar in American culture as well. So going back to the question, where are you from? I normally say I'm Canadian, but I remember last year I had a Korean friend over and we had somewhat heated debate about this topic because she was very insistent that I should say I am from Korea, even though I don't have my Korean passport anymore, being a country with just having one nationality. So I had to give it up when I was like 15 or 16. So and I left Korea when I was 10. So basically, I felt like large part of my growing period was spent abroad outside of Korea. So I don't really feel Korean per se, but I do have Korean origins. So obviously, I look Korean, and I do speak Korean. So I guess a lot of people think that I am Korean, but when I am in Korea, I mean, I also had to go to foreign ministry to get my visa among with other foreigners. So I'm not really accepted as a Korean by Koreans themselves either, right? So it's very confusing to see where are you from, and especially now I'm living in Belgium, which is neither Canada or France or Korea. This is like very confusing for a lot of people. I had a recent experience where I was just getting my blood sample done in the hospital, and the lady asked me, where are you from? So I told her, oh, like I explained to her the whole thing. I told her, well, I am not Belgium to begin off, and she just assumed that I am a Korean adoptee because there are a lot of apparently some Korean adoptees who were sent to Belgium. I don't know, like maybe in 80s or whatnot. So she has a son, and he's dating a girl who's a Korean adoptee who's a Belgian. So I was thinking, oh no, I'm not an adoptee. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I feel like whenever people ask me this question, when I say I'm Canadian, it's never good enough. When I say I'm French, people are even more confused because although I do speak French, I have quite a distinctive English accent when I speak French. So obviously I don't sound like natural French with a authentic accent, if you were to call it. Sometimes when I'm just say my last visit to London, and at the museum someone asked me where are you from, and I just am from Brussels because that's where I live now. But I think it's a question that changes a lot in terms of the answers. Like, because if someone that I've recently met asks me, where are you from? I'm not gonna say I'm from Belgium. I'm gonna say I am from Canada and France. And sometimes also people mistaking me, oh, then you're from Quebec. And I will then have to clarify, no, I'm not from Quebec. And there's this always this awkward stare that people make, saying, oh, but you are Asian origin, so where are you really from? Then I have to explain, oh, but I'm Korean in origin and blah blah blah. So it always takes me somewhat of a long time to explain my life story to people, and people are like, oh, okay, now I understand. I just think in a way it's a pity because I know there are a lot of, say, Turkish people living in Germany, and I've heard that a lot of second generations living in Germany who are from Turkish origin feel like they never fit in Europe. And I think part of like joining ISIS is part of this mentality where a lot of Europeans don't believe that you belong in their country, even though they have the nationality and they were born and raised there, just because you look different from them. And I don't know, what can you do? I mean, I thought we are living in the 21st century and we have internet, the communication is very easy nowadays. I thought we're living in a global village, but I guess it's really hard to change the mentality of people. I guess it will just take some more time. But yeah, so please let me know what you think. I don't know what your stories are. Is where you from quite an easy question for you, or do you also have stories like mine where it's a bit more complicated and the answer is never really straightforward enough? So if you like this video, please click thumbs up, subscribe, and leave comments. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye!